I don't want to make a living anymore, I want to make a life. We are human beings, we are not human doings. Today I want to talk about ambition and how I kind of lost mine over the last 12 months. I don't have ambition anymore, and I think this is a good thing. So bear with me as we explore this topic together, because I do think there is something that ties this into the greater conversation that's going on in our society at the moment. So about 6 months ago, I hit a point in my career where I had to ask myself, who am I if my profession went away tomorrow? So I'm a fantasy author. I have been writing books in some shape or form for the last 10, 12 years or so. And there was a moment where I really sat down. This might have been fueled by AI, which has become pretty good at writing books at this point. But so there was a moment where I really thought, who am I if I'm not writing books? And at first, I felt there was an emptiness there. I really thought that there wasn't that much there. I think that had to do with the fact that for the last 3-4 years, I had focused a lot on building this career as an author. When the pandemic hit, I dedicated all my time to learning the craft of becoming a novelist, learning how to write novels. And then I learned how to self-publish those novels, and then I learned how to market those novels. And it was all about this career shift towards writing novels. I think also because my husband and I moved here. We live in a remote cabin in Western Australia, and so there's not much social life going on. We are saving a lot in rent, and that's partly why we moved here. But there was only the focus on the work, basically. And that was also one of the reasons why we moved out here, because we wanted to focus on that and save up to build our own home one day, because we're currently renting where we live now. So there was this moment in time where I felt, if I'm not a writer, there's not much there. But ever since then, a shift has happened within me, and it was probably because I asked myself that question, that I'm not identifying myself anymore by what I do. I'm learning to identify myself by who I am. So we are human beings, we are not human doings. And this whole idea of making a living, I'm really starting to question that. And I know I have to make a living, and I know I have to make money to survive in this capitalistic society. But I want to tell you about a book that I read last year. It's called Original Wisdom. And in that book, it's written by a researcher, I think, who goes to South America to do interviews with indigenous peoples to better understand them, and I think to learn how to best serve them and integrate them in society. So one of the questions he asked them was, what do you think is your life's purpose? Like, what are your goals? What are you working towards? And they sort of all collectively looked at him and were like, what is a purpose? So they don't have this, what they call Western disease, illness of having to find your life's purpose. The same goes for the sun in Botswana. they don't have this disease that we have, that they need to achieve more, that they need to accomplish more, that they need to grow more. They are simply content watching the grass grow. And so for a while there, I was really concerned that I don't have ambition anymore. And I felt very empty because I had always been a very driven person and a person who was very future oriented. I don't actually think it's raining anymore, but at this point the umbrella is out, so we're just going to keep up. I think it also helps with the wind. So I was always very future driven. When I was 14, I wanted to be 16 because then I was allowed to stay out longer. When I was 16, I wanted to be 18 because then I can drive a car and finish high school and start living my life. When I moved to Berlin, all I wanted was to start traveling. And I always thought that when I get to that point, some distant point in the future, I'll be happy. When I achieve that, I'll be happy. When I get to this amount of followers, I'll be happy. When I sell this many books, I'll be happy. So that always put my joy and my happiness in some distant point in the future. And I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. And reading this book about how indigenous people look at life kind of put my mind at ease a little bit, because maybe this is a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that I no longer feel like I have anything to prove and that I don't want to make a living anymore. I want to make a life. And this sort of ties into the greater conversation that's going on at the moment. I recently watched a talk by Bill Gates, who basically said that in 10, 15 years or so, I think he said half of us won't have a job anymore because AI will be so much more efficient. And that is, of course, a terrifying thought. And I am not blind to the fact that this might turn into a dystopian nightmare, where it kind of turns into this movie Elysium with Matt Damon, where the majority of people who have become poor have been left behind on Earth, and the rich elite has moved off to some distant planet or somewhere in space. Was it Mars? Elon Musk comes to mind, I don't know. So they have all moved off and they are still living in their riches. And I see how it could turn that way. I'm not delusional. I see how it can turn that way, but I am also an optimist. And I do think it is important to also allow for some utopian thoughts. And I think as millennials, we have long stopped subscribing to this idea, this way of life that our parents' generation taught us, which is you're going to work all your life, and then once you're retired, then you can travel the world, then you can enjoy life. We're not doing that. We want to live in the now. We have traveled in our 20s, and we probably still do so. And so we want to live in the now, and we don't want to make a living, we want to make a life. And while I totally see that AI is disruptive and is scary, I also feel like as a society, we need to be disrupted. We have been living in a patriarchal society for a very, very long time, and that is how we approach everything that we do, especially our careers. And I came across this concept last year of the feminine, and how as women, it is actually not in our nature to constantly chase and to try to reach, get there first and be sort of the biggest and the greatest. And there's this image that comes to mind of what's actually happening in our bodies biologically. So there's the male sperm that is trying to chase to get to the female egg. It's all about the hunt. It's all about getting there first, being the first one there. But what does the egg do? The egg just sits there like a magnet, attracting, calm, quiet, just waiting her time and attracting all the goodness to her. And ever since I've come across this image or this metaphor, I keep thinking, could I get away with that? Could I get away with attracting rather than chasing? And it's a very attractive thought, quite frankly. And I feel so much more free ever since I've let go of my ambition and this constant need to grow and to go faster and to chase the next best thing. And like I said, that left me empty for a while. But now there's a strange sense of calm that overcomes me. And when I think about my future, first off, I try not to think about my future. I try to think about today. So this was the first year. 2025 was the first year that I didn't make any goals in January. I said all I want to do this year is live every day as best as I can. And so when I think about my future, I don't think about those numbers anymore. I don't think about money. I don't think about being a New York Times best-selling author, which, trust me, for a very long time was this strange obsession that I had. And honestly, you literally couldn't pay me now to become a New York Times best-selling author. I just ran out of storage space, so I had to delete some old stuff. But I wanted to circle back to this idea of a utopia. And there's an author, one of my favorite authors, Charles Eisenstein, who wrote the book, The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. He also wrote a book called Climate, A New Story, where he examines the climate crisis and basically reframes it as a symptom of a society that is sick. So what is the climate crisis and the heating climate if not a fever that has befallen us? So he talks about that humanity needs a new story, a story that is not based on separation, but a story that is based on unity and on community. And so, circling back also to what Bill Gates said, that we all might not have jobs anymore in 10 years from now. Maybe that's a good thing. And I mean, again, I am not stupid. I know that this is very, very dangerous and it's very, very complex and complicated, but it's windy. As human beings, there once was a time when we did literally just watch the grass grow. It is not natural and it is not normal to chase numbers, to chase money, to keep buying materialistic things. And so Eisenstein's vision is that we might all just, or a lot more people might actually go back to farming, to self-sustaining gardening, to a circular economy where we swap goods. And honestly, that's all I want to do. And I know that even that is such a luxury. today to be able to afford your own little piece of land and to build a house. We're not there. Frank and I, my husband and I, we're not there. We live out here because it saves us money, so hopefully we can get there one day. So my future, ideally, I see a little garden patch, a little cabin that's our own, a dog, and literally just watching the grass grow. And so I think no longer having ambition might be the healthiest thing that has happened to me in a long time, and I feel like this weight has been lifted, and I feel a lot more free, and I feel like now that I have beaten this illness, this disease of wanting to achieve all the greatness, I can actually focus on making a life and not a living. And that is a very, very encouraging thought. And so that's what I'm going to leave you with today. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for the next video. And in that moment, the decision was made. I was gonna quit. I was not gonna do it. I was gonna find a way to make a living traveling the world.